Hey everyone, good to see you all. This is the second week of May. Jeremy and I are going to be doing the overview for this week, or in our study of David. And we're going to start with Ephesians 2:19, and that reads, "So you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God." Jeremy, do you want to talk a little bit about this idea of becoming a part of God's household?
When I think about God's household, I think about the fact that we are chosen. We're all adopted. Some of you right now might be thinking, I wish I was adopted. Why do I have the parents I have? And your parents, I hate to tell you, are thinking the exact same thing. But with God, we've been adopted. We've been adopted. It's a choice He made to accept us into His family. And I think that's something you would talk about wanting to feel like you're part of something or feel like you belong. There's nothing more belonging than that, to know that the God of the universe chose you specifically to be part of His family.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we come into that realization, I think it's important for us to say God's not looking at us like we're a stranger or someone who just came and invited ourselves into our house, or rather He sees us as children. Think about, how you act when you go into a friend's house versus how you are in your own house, or how you're supposed to act when you go into like a stranger's house. Like, you don't act the same way. And God's not calling us to be strangers or be unwelcome visitors, but rather He's calling us to be His children, to be in His household. And with that comes a better understanding for us to see, one, God's plan, and two, a little bit to be able to grapple with when our plans don't necessarily meet with God's plans. And we're going to talk about that right now. This idea that, especially you seniors, you are not having, by any stretch of the imagination, the senior year that you really planned for or wanted.
Faith is ultimately believing what God has put in front of you today. And today, God has put COVID in front of us. Today, God has put COVID in front of us to disrupt graduation, to disrupt the end of school, to disrupt track, to disrupt prom, to disrupt everything. Okay, yeah. That's what it is. But yet, it is what God has given us right now. I always think back to if I would say to you, don't go play in the street. Chuck, do not play in the street. Okay? At this age in your life, I would hope you could give me several reasons why you should not play in the street. Right. However, if you would say to Rebecca, don't play in the street, she doesn't know any reasons why she should not play in the street. Right. So I've always felt like in my Christian life, if I can humble myself to admit that I'm just two and I really don't know anything and I need God to take care of me for everything, it really makes life a lot simpler.
Yeah. And again, being the child of God, not God's,
You're not God's teenager.
Yeah, thankfully.
Or God's mom.
Especially for us guys, that's a good thing that you're not God's mom. But man, that it really does make it hard when things don't go our way, and we have to really, come from this place instead of blaming God, saying, God, how could you let this happen? But say, okay, where's that plan? And in Isaiah chapter 9, it really kind of wrestles with that. And in verse 7 of Isaiah chapter 9, it talks about, it's talking about the government and the end of days and kingdoms and stuff, which, let's bring that into, school, family, community. That's, if we bring it into that. And, God's really talking about, when we think life is as bad as it can get, He says, this is not the end of it. I have greater plans. He says, but then in the last part of that, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. The passion of God, the purpose of God is going to come through. And I think, especially as we're going through this time, we need to understand that God isn't like sleeping. He's not ignoring us. Rather, He's still passionate and He's still working. And it's important for us, just as we talked about last week about being faithful in the little things. Like, there's a bunch of little things you have. You're stuck at home. How are you responsible? How are you faithful to God now? And God's talking about, maybe this is a time He's growing us. Maybe this is a time where maybe He has taken some of those things away, because maybe there would have been some stumbling blocks in your life that you would have fallen into. And maybe He had to take that out of your life. I'm not blaming this on you, but you never know. Maybe prom something bad would have happened at prom. Maybe track season would have been too much. You don't know. I don't know. But I think in the grand scheme of things, we need to understand that God is passionate about faithfulness in his time. And as we continue to look at this idea of God's plan, we need to understand that earth is not God's end all be all. We serve a God who is in heaven. I'm going to speak from John chapter 18 this Sunday, and after, if we read from John 18, we're going to look at verses 36 right now. This is a little bit after from what I'm going to talk about this Sunday, but here the guards come to arrest Jesus. And remember, he's talking, he's like, you're arresting me now, you're coming with all these swords, with all these men. He's like, don't you understand? I could snap my finger and you guys would be struck with lightning. Or do you understand how pointless this is? And here in 36, this is Jesus, and he's recognizing. He said, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world. And man, at least when I think about this, all the struggles I have in this world kind of get put into perspective that God's not focused on me having everything I want right here. Rather, he's focused on what is to come. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, as you're reading that, I was also thinking of another passage. Hebrews chapter 11 is kind of the Faith Hall of Fame. So everybody always, and if you get a chance, check out Hebrews 11. And you're going to read about Abraham and Isaac, and the list goes on and on and on. But then you get towards the end of Hebrews 11, and I don't have a Bible in front of me, so I'm thinking it's around verse 30, around in that area in Hebrews chapter 11. There's a very simple statement that basically talks about the fact that none of the people, though, while they were alive, got anything from God.
Yeah.
And so it's what Chuck was just talking about. Some of the things we're going through right now on earth, we will not understand until we get to heaven. And there have been people that have followed God their whole life, that have maybe martyrs that have been killed for Christ, literally have had horrible lives.
Yeah.
And they have seen nothing out of that faith, but yet they do when they get to heaven. And I think that's hard for us to, because, okay, we're humans. We want instant gratification, right? We want it all right now. We want to know right now. And that's not at all how God operates.
Yeah. Which, however, that's how we tend to operate, which
Right.
makes this constant grind. And I think really that's where faith comes in, where we say, even though I don't necessarily understand all of it, I'm going to operate knowing that God has best interest.
Yeah, it's back to another passage in Isaiah. God taught, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. If something makes sense to us, that's probably not good spiritually, quite frankly.
Yeah.
If something seems uncomfortable or odd, that's probably God leading. That's just the honest truth.
So the funny part about it. And so when we think about this, when we think about that, we aren't intruders. We're not unwelcome guests. We're not strangers in God's house. Rather, we are his children, that we can be comfortable, that we are loved, that we are welcomed, and that he has a plan for us. And that his plan, we might not understand it, but it's not an abusive plan. It's not a neglectful plan. It's a plan that God has passionately placed and pursued in our life. And now let's come back to David. Now, obviously, all through David's life, he could have asked, and you read the Psalms and it's filled with, God, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? There are tons of times in David's life where, God says, you are a man after my own heart. And then David says, okay, then why is the man after your own heart being chased by the king? Why is the man after your own heart being chased by his own son, or having all of these ridiculously awful situations happen? But yet he stays faithful. We have to constantly remind ourselves, this isn't it, let's look up. This isn't it, let's look up. So those are kind of some thoughts that we have from this week. I would encourage you guys to check out the David reading plan on the Bible app. Be reading that. I'll be posting throughout the week just to hopefully have some discussion on it. But Jeremy, thanks for joining me this week. And I hope you guys all have a great Sunday. Hope to see you at our drive-in service, 10:30 on Sunday. You can bring your car, and it's, I think, going to be nice enough where you could even maybe bring a lawn chair or a blanket and sit outside your car, on top of your car. I was going to say underneath your car, but maybe I don't recommend that. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.